I was once asked to speak in the United States Congress, and I was told I could only bring one person who could be my assistant. So I thought, well, of course I'll bring one of my children. And it was Sarah's turn. So we went over protocol, what it means to go through security to speak in Congress. We studied it together. I'd never done it before. We studied who we would be talking to, the speech writers, the congressional aides, the wives of senators and congressmen. And we were told we were supposed to wear black, gray, or brown suits. And I told her what manners would be like and what I expected her to do and how I expected her to talk to people. So she has in her soul that experience. We wanted our children to be international. And so whenever we had the opportunity of speaking in a foreign country, we would take at least one of our children with us because it was too expensive to take all of them. Clay and I decided that, and he was so gracious about this, he said, you know, you spent a number of years being a single missionary. So when our children became 15 years old, they would have the honor of going with me on a mission trip to some of my favorite countries where I'd worked in Eastern Europe, Austria, Poland, Hungary, Romania. Usually I would do it around a time when I could go be with my old team of missionaries, or when there was some kind of a retreat, or I would have the opportunity to speak. But it's really a special, special time that over the years my children learned what it was like to travel internationally, to have a passport, and to go and listen to a foreign language, and to understand that God's love was not just for Americans, it was for people of every country. Now, I know that not everybody lives the same life. Maybe you don't have the finances to travel or the time to travel. But in your own city and country, you can do things. There's a wonderful ministry called International Students. And in places where there are universities, the International Students organization is looking for families to adopt somebody who's living here from out of the country and to treat them during the year, to bring them home over holidays, so that that person can become a Christian. It's a way that families are supposed to reach out. Have an international student stay with you. There's a Chinese dinner that we found in our town that the Chinese church has every year for all of the community. We were going to go on a trip to China, so we found out about this. Look for those opportunities to expose your children to different food, to different ideas, to real plays, to real concerts. Whatever it is, it can be so many different things. But as you enrich your children's souls, they will have a bigger capacity at understanding cultures and people and experiences and how to do things. When you go, take them with you. One time we were on a trip, and we would take our children on historical trips. I dreamed and dreamed of taking them on a historical trip. So my friend and I threw our 7 children into the car. It was a time when Clay was always busy every year writing a catalog, and her husband was a veterinarian. He had all these cows that he dealt with these 2 or 3 weeks during the year. We jumped in the car. We got Books on Tape by Louisa May Alcott. We drove all the way from Colorado to Boston. We went to Louisa May Alcott's home. We stayed with a heart surgeon who had said, will you come speak to my group? And when we were in his kitchen, he got a model of a heart and showed my children what he did for a living. He did angioplasts. You see, you look for those times for your children to be exposed to many different life experiences. It broadens them, it stretches them, it gives them fun stories, great memories. And finally, we need to train our children how to be gracious, how to have manners. I taught a leadership class last year in one of my daughter's arenas, and it was a leadership class. At the first semester, we talked about what does it mean to develop leadership skills. What does it mean, the second class, how to develop a speech. And since that was one of my majors in college, I did it and I had so much fun. But I could tell the children who'd been trained, training in these areas by nurturing your children's souls to speak to adults, to treat them with respect, to tell them thank you, to write thank you notes, to open the doors for ladies or for people who are older than you, to give up a chair to an older person when you're on a tram or a bus. These are the kinds of life skills that give them the opportunity to relate better to people, because when someone is gracious, when someone is thankful, It opens the heart of the person that they would be with. Why is it that when Jesus healed the 10 blind men, only one person said thank you? So I taught my children, I want you to be thankful. When we travel and stay in people's homes, we all quickly write a little thank you note, put our names on it, and leave it on their bed. Why? Because I might forget to write them a thank you note when I get home. But being thankful, showing appreciation. When our children go to someone's house for dinner, we said, it would be so nice if you would take a flower, maybe a few chocolates, or a little card, whatever you can, just as a way of saying, thank you for having me over. As we cultivate these skills for our children, we are giving them an advantage in life. You don't have to have come from a family who had a lot of hospitality. You just have to learn how to do it little by little. Hospitality is merely putting aside all of the things on your table, lighting a candle and saying, come into my house. I learned hospitality in a new way when I went to visit some very poor people in Poland. And even though every fork on the table was mismatched and every chair was old and mismatched, when I walked into their small apartment, this Polish family reached out to me and said, welcome to our home. We were allowed meat only twice during the year, but we saved it for you. We're so happy to have you with us. I realized that hospitality and graciousness and manners are those things that have to be taught and trained and practiced, but they help children have an advantage in having relationships with other people. And finally, cultivating in our children a love for excellence. I would go to the library and find fine art pieces on that people like Michelangelo, Rembrandt had painted, and I would had these little easels in my house. I didn't have enough money to buy them at the time, but I would put them on my easels and I would say, look at this beautiful picture that Rembrandt painted. He's a Dutch master. Let's look and see what we can find out about him. We understood that if our children grew up listening to dramatic books on tape that Dickens had in his stories, they would learn a good vocabulary. When my children were little, I thought, I don't totally understand Shakespeare, but maybe my children will. So I got the Lamb's Book of Shakespeare, during one of our summers, which was a book that was made to be a little bit more understandable for children. I bought my boys swords, little plastic swords. I made them a little cape, and I read Romeo and Juliet to all of my children. You would think Romeo and Juliet is about romance, but it's about gang members. It's about prejudice. And my children became so engaged in the story, they loved it. I didn't tell them that they weren't supposed to like Shakespeare. They loved the story. It captivated them. When we feed our children on excellence, when we give them wonderful standards, when we read them great books, when we let them listen to beautiful music, there will become a refining in their soul that has been shaped by foundations of cultivating their souls, watering the seeds of excellence, nurturing a heart that understands what it means to have had many experiences and to develop confidence in their world. But as mothers, we can be intentional and provide this excellence that nobody else can. I've met many children who have sawdust souls, souls that haven't been nurtured. But I can tell those children whose souls have been nurtured by a mother who provided experiences and training that exalted their confidence and helped them to relate to more people. It's one of the funnest activities of a mom. This week, think about how you can be a gardener of your own child's soul. God bless you this week.